Hi guys!
Hello.
Welcome to Ed Arlene's Spirit Cast. If you're new to this podcast, we talk about all things related to mindfulness, magic, astrology, tarot, Reiki, and anything in that realm. Today we have another amazing guest. It's actually Dan. He's already been on our podcast before, and we're really excited about this episode. Our intro is not our normal intro, though. He's going to do a crystal reading for us. But before he does it, do you want to tell them where they can find us at?
So you can follow us over on Twitter at edpro_pgh. We tweet a lot. You can follow us on Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, Facebook at Ed Arlene. You can follow us on YouTube where we post Reiki-infused videos almost every single day. And you can subscribe and like to get that. And then if you like what we do, you can become a patron over on Patreon. And we also send Reiki out to everybody on our email list once a month. And that's also linked down below if you want to sign up for that.
All right, let's get into the reading.
Okay.
All right, first things first, I gotta light my candle. So may the powers that were, that are, and that will be with us. Okay, now I've got my labradorite compass. So we're gonna do a general reading for the collective. So I'm gonna pick out 5 stones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh. All right, so black tourmaline has landed in the center. The center is the general message that all the other messages stem from. Black tourmaline is a major protective stone. So I'm guessing that the collective has got to be kind of shored up with their protection because a lot's probably coming.
Oh, geez.
So black tourmaline in your center also says that you have that we as a collective are finding that people need to see us in a practical and reliable way. So that probably says something that, our abilities are needed right now, especially with protection from what's going on and what's about to happen. It is also pointed into the south. The south direction is associated with talents and success and persistence. So pointing into the south, it is time to consolidate your plans for the future in a practical and realistic way. So not only do people need to see us and understand us in a practical and reliable way, but we also need to focus our plan and energy for the future in a practical and realistic way. So that's pretty synchronicity right there. Let's go over to the southeast, which we have emerald. Southeast is associated with all aspects of wealth. So that can be money, that can be self-worth, anything that you put your time, energy into and what comes of it. We have emerald. Emerald in the southeast is saying and it's off the board, which means it's coming in the future. So with all this protecting and people needing to see us in a practical way, we also need to make sure that what we do for others and ourselves is truly appreciated and recognized. So don't let people take advantage of what you're doing, all this protection work. We've got blue lace agate in the north. The north is talking about talents, which create a flowering personal potential. So what could come of the future with blue lace in the north is security and safety. So that's dead on in the center. So through our talents will come security and safety. The northwest and the north, we have sunstone, which is the masculine stone, which is also the luck stone. So in the northwest, that covers social interactions, the situations in which we want to try and help others. And again, the north is talent. So we will have much luck in the talent of helping and talking to others. And then lastly, we have amber. Amber is in the west and the southwest. West is your physical body. So Amber is telling us about our physical bodies, that we might have a large myriad of ideas or energies or projects that we're working on right now. And it says to keep a note of each one so you can review them in quieter times. So we must take quieter times to look at what every project is that we're doing right now, spiritually and emotionally. Southwest covers all aspects of relationships, especially those that we are emotionally tied to. So Amber in the Southwest is telling us that as far as our emotional attachments go to others, over intellectualizing can lead to disagreements when emotions are not considered. When you're talking with people that you're emotionally connected to, don't overthink a lot of stuff that cause disagreements. Consider their emotions and consider your own. So it sounds like a lot of goodness in the future, but currently focusing on projects and double checking and reassuring that it's all correct and safely protected.
Yay.
Yay.
All right. I just want to take a quick moment to invite everyone listening to check out our shop at edarlene.com. If you like what we do, it is one of the most simple ways to support us. Plus, you will get some sweet handcrafted goods like our amazing 100% soy candles, which also come in our energy kits, such as Moonchild and Let That Shit Go. If you love our quotes, we have them available for print in a variety of formats. And of course, there's our book, pre-orders, and it is also the best place to go if you would like to book a Reiki session with us. All of this can be found at edarlene.com and linked in the show notes. Alright guys, we're back, and today we have Dan back on our show, and the theme of this episode is about like self-discovery, self-acceptance, and basically like the power you find whenever you start like loving and embracing who you are. So Dan, why don't you can introduce yourself for anybody who's new if they haven't listened to your previous episodes. That was a while ago. He's like, we like to joke that he's a crystal intuitive.
Yeah.
But he's expanded since that episode with his magical practices, which is pretty amazing. And yes, do you want to tell them a little bit about yourself before we get into your story?
Hello, I'm Dan. I'm into crystals now, and candle magic, earth magic, light, love, and happiness, and sending out good vibes.
Yeah. So let's start with your spiritual journey. Like, what got you to where you're at today?
Well, I would kind of say it's like what got me back to where I was when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, I was very much into like love and spirits and goodness, and kind of saw love and light in everything. But I grew up in an extremely religious home, and as you get older, doubt and whatnot can kind of take over, and people make you doubt yourself and your self-love and your self-worth, and it's a journey to get back to that as you get older.
Do you have an extremely religious background?
Yeah. So the type of religion I grew up in was born-again Christian, which is like a very, very tight, small kind of sect of Christianity. My husband described it as, when we go to your family reunion and your Catholic cousins are all there and they're smoking and drinking and swearing. He goes, that's what normal people think when you say you're a Christian. And he was like, your family and your friends from your church is something I've never seen, but I've only heard of. Mm-hmm. So it's a very intense, literal take on the Bible. Like, whatever the Bible says, like, that's truth. And that's the only thing that you can ground yourself on and live accordingly to. Mm-hmm. So growing up in that and being gay was quite interesting.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah. The whole journey with being gay was quite interesting, too. People started calling me gay at a pretty young age, and I didn't believe it. So it wasn't until I got older that I understood that it was what it was.
Yeah, I mean that's so interesting because I actually was like reading an article about the idea that everything that is something that somebody tells us about ourselves. You know what I mean? Like you are who you are until somebody tells you something about yourself. Like until somebody says you're this or you're that, and then you take that in and it goes into your consciousness and you start do what you will with it. Like you accept it or you don't accept it or whatever it is. So like you think we'll use like beauty for an example. Like nobody thinks that they're unattractive until somebody makes them feel unattractive or tells them that they're unattractive, and then either they can choose to be like, no, I'm not, or they could choose to go down this like horrible self-hating rabbit hole. You know what I mean? So it's like interesting that you say like as a child you just were you until somebody started telling you about yourself, and then then what happened after that? You know what I mean?
Well, I used to always say, like, if somebody didn't teach you to brush your teeth and tell you that you brush your teeth, you would never brush your teeth because you wouldn't know that it was a thing that you had to do.
Yeah.
As a little young, boy, physical, filled with lots of feminine energy, I'm sure it was confusing and somewhat disturbing for some adults that were born into a society that was very masculine, feminine, either or, nothing in between. So, I mean, at 6 years old, my sister's best friend's mother I'd go to her house and she'd babysit me and she would tell me to not stand a certain way, stop moving my hands when I talk, quit talking like a girl, stuff like that. And it just snowballed year after year in school, and then on top of it, I did ballet. And it was just like this whole constant conflict of being in a male body with lots of feminine energy disturbed people just because it was. And so that's why I said in the beginning, like, it's a journey for me to return to my natural state. All of the stuff in the religion and the things people said over the years that kind of changed me, and get back to just simply being divinely born, existing the way that I naturally was created.
Yeah.
I love that. It's the undoing. You're undoing years and years and years of projections to get back to who you really are.
I believe everybody's born perfect. You know what I mean? It always mind-blowing how we can like instill in children that they're not, whenever in fact you are born perfect, because the divine doesn't make mistakes. Like if you ascribe to the divine not making mistakes, then how can you tell somebody that their existence and the way they live is a mistake? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's not hurting anybody, of course.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Obviously, if you're like a serial killer or something, like.
Right. And there's so many factors with like religion with that too. I mean, step one in Christianity is the fear of God, like to be afraid of God, and everyone's born with sin. And it wasn't until like later, so eventually as I got older, it became like two different lives. I had my gay life with my friends at the club where I didn't really have any like strife, and then there was like the church life. So I'd be dancing at the club on Saturday and singing in church on Sunday, and it was just like up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. No like middle. And it wasn't until like later that I started to actually like look into why the Bible says what it says about being gay, and I had to research all the way down to like the Latin. And the word that translates in Latin to homosexuality in the Bible, I forget the exact spelling, but it's like arkins, something like that. Arknosl, something like that. Anyway, the original Latin word talks about like child molestation. So way back in the day, altar boys were a thing. We're talking thousands of years ago, and priests would have sex with them to absolve the priest of their sin. And this was like pre-Jesus, pre-Christianity. This was just like what they did, because you had to transfer your sin to something innocent for you to then be sinless. It was like kind of sacrificing a lamb. It's really, but anyway, as the Bible evolved, they turned that word, which meant an adult man transferring his sin to a young child, into homosexuality. And those are not the same thing. The Bible actually doesn't say anything about homosexuality. Even where it says man shouldn't lie with another man, that word, that Latin word, is there in the original text. So it's talking about, again, an adult man, lying with a child to absolve them of their sin. And so that got the whole ball rolling, like, well, what does the Bible even really say? Because if you look at all the translations, it's different translation after translation. So if we're going to base our entire life off of what this book says, what does it actually say? I brought that question to my parents and people in the church, and I mean, they just thought I was filled with Satan and living the gay life, and this is what happens when you question and blah, blah, blah. And, and then I just started living my life out loud and ended up getting kicked out of the youth group and kicked off the worship team. And, I never looked back.
How would you say your relationship was with like your own personal spirituality prior to deciding that you wanted to like take a change? Like, was that a long process, like whenever you started researching the Bible more, or like how did it play out for you?
So I definitely always had what I learned in church spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
I always had this sort of great sense of self, like worth or like survivorship sort of thing, like being bullied or whatever, and you get down and stuff. And there were just certain songs or moments I would take and always kind of like gas myself up to be okay. So I don't know. There were definitely two different spiritual paths happening at the same time. One was natural into me, and one was like what I was taught. And the one that was taught kind of felt like just slapping myself with a book, and the other that just came naturally. So like I remember specifically one time I was like really depressed about my situation, and I was probably like 13. So it was like I was starting to realize that like what I felt versus what people said was like there was a split. Like it wasn't what people said about me. Anyways, and it was like winter, and I went to the park, and I was like listening to all this like music about loving yourself and stuff. And I started drawing in the snow, and like I wrote my name, and I drew the symbol, and I drew a heart, and I laid on top of it and stared up at the sky. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I felt like that was a very divine moment, because I wasn't thinking about like what I'd been taught. I was just like spiritually feeling what I was feeling and doing what I was doing, and it came naturally. And after that moment, it was just like wonderful. And I've had a lot of those different types of moments, as I'm sure everybody does, but certain ones really stick out in my mind on a spiritual journey of how I got to where I was going. The ability that I have now, I've had all along. It was just buried.
That's cool, because like I think everybody has the divine within us like already, like naturally, and we have this natural intuitive guidance as well, so we can either choose to suppress it or listen to it. And it seems like you had these moments where you were just allowing that innate wisdom within you to come to the surface, or you were kind of letting your intuitive self guide you, which is often, associated with your heart and your heart center. Mm-hmm. So it seems like those moments, like when you said you did a heart and you were coming from this like self-love moment, it seems like you were just kind of like going into that place.
I love how you mentioned the music and how music helped you, gas yourself up and to feel better. And when we talked about this a long time ago, but like Archangel Sandalphon works through music. So I feel like you probably had a really strong connection with Archangel Sandalphon going throughout all this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I in a sense leaned on him more than anything. If you had looked through my playlists back in the day, they were like happy, sad, mad. Like it was all an emotion. And with like religion and the way that we believed in it, like you were supposed to be completely devoid of self. Like you were supposed to quote die to self and then accept Jesus, and then Jesus lived in you, and that was it. And so you weren't allowed, you were allowed, but like your emotion, you were never taught to trust your own emotions. For the longest time, I would express my emotions through music. So if I felt sad, I wouldn't just sit there and be sad. I had to play this one Mariah Carey song and cry during it. And that's how I like expressed my emotions, which was like an extremely healing thing. And it's funny, I used to always like run a bath and light some candles and play some music. And I do that now in like a witchy sense, but like, I've read so many times about how important baths are to like witches or spiritual people and stuff. And I'm like, I was doing that shit all along and didn't know it,
That's funny.
Yeah.
That was really funny. Oh, wow.
So after I kind of let go of some of the religion, like the man-taught religion, the form of the Bible that it's in now, I always, have been sort of spiritual, but I really leaned into the spiritual community. Following you guys, that helped me awaken a lot. I always joke like it started with houseplants. Got really into houseplants. I think I needed to be surrounded by life, and that sort of energy. And then it turned into, essential oils. So crystals really helped me as an organizing tool, all the different shapes, all the different colors, what all they mean. Because after letting go of the religion sort of thing and accepting myself, which took years, and, meeting my husband, he helped me and everything, stand up for myself and whatnot. I felt very, just kind of not lost, but sort of just like I had lived in this tiny little spiritual box and the gates were blown wide open. And here I was at the precipice of the universe. And it was just like, I could have believed anything had you told me it, because I had lived in this bubble. Mm-hmm. So crystals really were the huge one that helped me organize. It was almost like the playlists and the music. Mm-hmm. Like if I was sad, I'd look at my crystals and I'd pick up smoky quartz and I'd hold it and I'd Google smoky quartz and I'd read about it and then I'd meditate on it and it would help heal that part of me or whatever. And so, I've leaned on crystals really hardcore. But for years, it was all like definitely self-healing. I didn't do much outward. Now I'm doing more outward stuff. Like, if somebody's sick, I'll do a candle healing spell. Or if somebody's whatever, needs some luck, I'll send them a kit. Like I really honed my skills and now I can use them to help others instead of just myself.
Wow. Yeah, I always talk about that. Like the idea of going within for yourself, and then once you're able to find that place of self-love and acceptance, you can expand it outward. That's why self-love is so important, and I feel like society really conditions us to feel like we don't matter or that we're not valid or whatever,
or that something's always wrong.
So how can you help anybody if you're not even where you need to be,
Right.
But once you get there, you can do a lot with it for sure.
You're too big, you're too dark, you're too feminine, you're too this, you're too that. You step outside the church telling you that you're imperfect and you step into a society that finds every fault they can about you. And so I'm just on this major self-love thing. Positivity, Black Lives Matter, all of it, whatever. Come as you, as they say at church, but then you come as you are, and then they don't like you.
Yeah, that contradicts itself so much. I remember too, speaking of just going to your house, and then you were getting more and more plants, and then I remember you were pulling out essential oils more and more, and then you started doing a lot of crystal stuff. And I remember before we started talking and getting more involved with witchcraft and stuff like that as a friend group, I remember talking to my sister and going, I think he is a witch. Can we tell him this?
And we said, okay, well, let's give him an obsidian and see what happens. Let's see what he says about this.
Was the match that lit the fire with crystals, though.
Yeah, but we had multiple conversations. We think he's a witch. We think he's a green witch. It appears so. Oh, there's another indication. Okay.
I just remember us trying to figure out how to talk to you about it, but knowing your background, we didn't want to
right. Didn't want to overstep.
Shake the pot or
shake anything. It too hard because we didn't know where you stood with the witchcraft and I'll never forget. Our friend listens to this, but when we started using crystals years and years ago, she thought that they were satanic and tools of the devil or whatever, and it was bad. And I'm glad that whole narrative's shifting.
Yeah, but a lot of people felt that way too. Back when she believed that, a lot of people thought tarot was bad. The whole thing. You do know you were part of the church.
My parents used to say if you see a pentagram, run. So when I started some of this stuff in the beginning, there were moments where I was like, am I worshiping the devil. You know, like all that old stuff would come up, and I can happily say that now it doesn't anymore ever. And that's what I was going to talk about next, was like the power of like letting go and acceptance. Because you guys know, I used to sit down and talk to you for an hour and a half every time we hung out about my journey. And that's all great, but I was trying to pinpoint the point in which I wasn't as affected by it and living like in it anymore. And it was like this, I know it's going to sound funny, but tidying up with Marie Kondo. She has this concept for people that are hoarders. So, I mean, there's people that physically hoard, and then there's people that emotionally and spiritually hoard. And it's that you take an item and you thank it for what it's done for you, what it is, the emotion it makes you feel, and then you let it go, you know, if it's something that's just shoved in your closet. So I had all this emotional, spiritual hoarding. And that was like the real healing was, okay, this happened, this amount of time you spent on that, and maybe not thanking it, but accepting it and then letting it go. It's not currently affecting me. It's not currently part of my existence. It's a closed chapter in a book on a shelf that if I want to, I can get out and read it as a history lesson, but it's not in my present moment. And, you know, that's part of the magic that everybody has in creating their own universe, is every moment is a chance for you to create whatever it is you want.
One thing, too, is, like, a lot of times people who have, like, traumatic experiences with religion, they'll go the opposite and lose their faith, which, you know, I think all paths are valid, so that's how it shakes out, that's fine. But I think it's interesting that you ended up finding your own path and kind of like stronger connection almost with the divine, you know, talking and stuff. You're not blaming like Jesus or, you know, whatever.
You know, I don't know everything. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, the Bible says this, so you're wrong." That has no what's the word, like meekness to it at all. Like when I approach the divine or something, I'm in like full respect and like meekness to the, like, admiring their divine power, not saying like, "Oh, I know, so you're whatever."
That is saying something, because a lot of people who do end up leaving a religion or detaching, they do end up, you know, swearing off God or everything.
All major religions.
And demonizing it as all being corrupt and evil.
For me, it just changed, you know. I mean, I sometimes still pray to Jesus, you know, but I call God the Great Spirit. And I think that comes from Native American culture. I read it online and I just really liked that name. You know, you're just saying the Great Spirit. And I feel like that encompasses the divine masculine, the divine feminine, and everything in between. You know, and I think just being born the way that I was, with all this feminine energy in a male body, that it was always going to be part of my journey. And I was just telling my husband the other day, we were on the couch, and I forget, we were talking about something masculine, and I said, in the next life, I want to come back as a female. We were joking about it, and I said, I'm enjoying this male body, but spiritually and emotionally, I'm neither or. I'm just the spirit in this brain operating this body that happens to be male. Sure, scientifically, or whatever, looking at me, the body is male, but inside it is, I guess, non-binary. I wouldn't say it's just feminine either. It's just divine energy.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's how everybody is, to be, you know, it's just which one you're connecting with more. And it seems like a societal construct to tell people what, you know, how they should act, how they should be, and then attribute things to gender, like, oh, girls wear pink, boys wear blue, instead of just letting people just kind of live and just be happy and figure it out on their own.
See, I think it's changing.
No, it's definitely changing. I think our generation, for sure, the kids, like our kids, are going to have a much easier go of that, like, sense of identity, you know?
Because I was reflecting with you the other day, I'm like, I'm glad we're getting to a point in society where you don't have, like, for me, like, I'm a girl, I'm a woman, but I don't have to always dress super feminine to feel attractive. And it's nice now that, like, I could post a selfie in my story and then get in a hoodie and like sweatpants and still get, oh wow, you're so pretty and all that without having to have my full face of makeup on, or have my skin showing, have my tits out, like whatever. Like, I'm glad we're getting to a point now where it's people like you for you, and it's not always about how you look.
Yeah.
Right. And society just tries to like shrink you. I mean, it's getting better. But if you're whatever, if you're a man, you have to do this. If you're a woman, you have to do this. If you're blah 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 blah. And it's like that's such a shrinking small way to live. And I've always been interested in the quote more feminine things. I mean, I started doing ballet at 5, and it was like my parents, and I get that they were trying to protect me, and even friends, parents, whatever. It was like a big secret. Nobody knew for years that I did ballet because I was a boy. And when I would go to class, like the teachers would talk about how amazing it was to have a boy in the class, because you can never get a boy to do ballet. But there are boys that do ballet. And it's like, it's so weird. You put on a shirt, you put on tights, you put on dance shoes, you go in a room, they play music, and you move your body. And because you're physically male, that's strange or unheard of, And then I went to beauty school and wanted to be a hairdresser, and I got tortured. I went to Votech by all the boys at that school for being a boy doing hair. It's like, I can't physically move my fingers to operate scissors and a comb because that's an innately feminine thing. It's like, to me now, looking back at it, it's like, how stupid.
Yeah.
I'm just a body moving my hands with scissors and a comb. That has nothing to do with gender.
It is ridiculous.
It's like
toxic masculinity is just suppressed feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge component in the 90s and early 2000s, where people think it was cool to put someone else down for their orientation or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like that whole culture.
It's definitely extra weird whenever it just comes naturally to you. You're just being yourself and doing the things that you like.
Yeah.
Every angle of every day, people are telling you that you're weird and wrong. It's like, but I'm just doing what I feel.
Yeah. Oh, that's so crazy. That's crazy to think about. It's funny too, because like we don't even think about how the impact that has on the person who is just living their life, because you're not the only person who's had those experiences. So like, then you have that in your consciousness constantly, like, is something that I like gonna make people make fun of me or put me down in some way? Like, how many other people are having those experiences too? It's kind of like up to us as a society to decide that that's not right. You know? Like, it's not okay to, especially children. A lot of this stuff happens to people when they're really young. It seems. When I was a kid, and I realize this now, how important it was that whoever made the decision to do this did it. But we had, in elementary school, we had the boys' side and the girls' side for, like, to play. And I don't know why they separated us by gender, but they did. And I had a friend who, he's gay now. He, like, does drag, and he was always like that, though. And we were really little. We were really young, and they let him play on the girls' side, and no one thought it was weird. Like, none of the kids did, because when you're a kid, you don't know, like, the ideas of gender and stuff like that unless an adult's telling you.
That school did break the rules, though, because I was able to go on your breaks and everything with you.
Yeah. Yeah, but they let this little boy who, felt more comfortable with the girls, who wanted to sit and play Barbies with us. We all loved him. We were all, you had the bonbon lip gloss and all that stuff. Like, we were doing all that. Like, he was one of the girls.
The body glitter, yeah.
Yeah, and we never thought it was never, like, nobody ever complained about it. No one ever thought it was weird. And the teachers did it on purpose. So whoever made that decision was, like, extra.
Earth angel.
Yeah, because that probably, like, how did that help him? Like, how did it help him growing up? You know what I mean?
Falls under the umbrella of society getting over gender.
Mm-hmm.
So, gay marriage, for example, you can look at it as like the thing that we're getting over is gay marriage. No, the thing that we're getting over is gender. Gay marriage falls under the getting over gender because you no longer care that there's two grooms or two brides or whatever, because the gender of those people doesn't matter. They can get married.
Yeah.
like the boy can play with the girl can play football, like all this stupid blue and pink, blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? And society getting over gender.
Yeah.
Huge step forward.
You know, as we get more like, you know, evolved spiritually, we start to accepting ourselves and others easier too, because our core belief systems are not ones of like oppression, they're ones of love. And like, you know, if you're of love, then of course you're not going to want to see somebody upset over something as trivial as wanting to go to beauty school. You know what I mean?
When we were talking to Ronnie, I don't think that we were able to record what she said about like when she was younger, was a kid and she was getting like reprimanded for doing something wrong, and for some reason like the instinct of some people is to hurt a child, but the kid, you know, she stopped and was like, what did I do wrong? Can you tell me what I did wrong so I can fix it and not do it again?
Yeah.
So why are people so quick to want to punish a child or reprimand a child when they don't know any better? So if we all, you know, for everybody, anybody listening to this, like if you move forward and like see that, like this is a 5-year-old, how can you expect a 5-year-old not to mess up and spill a cup of water or make a mess? Why is your first instinct to hurt them? Why can't you just teach them? Like, don't do that again. It's dangerous, you know, don't do that.
I think people are afraid of different. You know, they're afraid to face something that tells them that they have to accept something different. You know what I mean? Little boy filled with feminine energy, and you're like, I need to fix that instead of just letting it be or whatever. Conversion therapy.
Oh gosh. That's terrifying.
You went to conversion therapy twice, right?
Yeah, worst 5 months both times of my life. But you know, I wanted to go because I sort of came out to my parents-ish. But it wasn't like, hey, I'm gay, like, accept it. I was like, I have this problem, and I can't fix it. Because, again, with the whole, like, teeth brushing thing, like, if I didn't know to brush my teeth, if somebody didn't teach me, I never would. I had never heard of gay. So I didn't even know that that was an option. I had only ever seen Belle with the Beast and Jasmine with Aladdin. I had never even heard of gay until, like, 6th grade. I think somebody brought up Will and Grace. And they were like, yeah, 2 boys, like, whatever. But, like, I had felt that sort of pull to masculinity, like, watching movies and stuff. And I had a crush on Matthew Lawrence from Boy Meets World in, like, 5th grade. But like, it wasn't like, oh, I have an attraction to him. It was like this weird, I find him attractive, but I don't know why, because I had never heard of it, sort of. So, yeah, conversion therapy. So when I came out, I was like, oh, how do I fix this? So my church had this class, which was like real secret, on Mondays, where you would go for 4 hours a week for like 5 months straight. It was sexual healing was what it was. So you would show up and you would talk about like whatever your ish was, and you would sing worship songs and then have a lesson, and then you'd break into these small groups, and they make you stand up on the first day and tell you what your thing is. And I just stood up and was like, well, I'm, you know, Daniel, I'm 17 years old and I am gay. And like, that was the first time I had ever said I'm gay, was at conversion therapy out loud.
Oh,
gosh.
Wow.
And sweating and feeling weird. And I was in this room full of people who had all kinds of other really, you know, damaging issues that they were trying to fix. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, I'm trying to fix this, but this is like, my thing is like much smaller than what other people are talking about. But yeah, I went once and it didn't work. And then the second time I went back, but I would have these huge moments. Like at the end of the first time that I did it, I like wrote this poem about how God changed me and I was no longer gay and blah, blah, blah. And I'd spend like 2 months living in that, and then it would just come right back. And it was just full out 100% denial.
I remember, so we've known you for a very long time, and I used to go hang out with you guys, and Dee wouldn't be there. I'm like, oh, Dan's on his weird thing again.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight. Yeah. But you would have these periods where you would like not hang out. Like you said, like it'd be like a couple months, and then you'd be back, and we're like, okay, it was just something he's going through. It's fine. Like we didn't even like bat a lash. Actually, now that I think about it.
Well, I don't think we didn't know the severity of it all.
No, we didn't know what you were doing either.
Like,
guys about the religion at all.
Yeah, like it's like at the beginning when you said like you were religious, we just thought it was, oh, you went to church every Sunday and that was it. We didn't know the gravity of this religious cult that you were raised in. And
it was 100% a cult.
100% a cult. And I always like off podcast, like you're one of the strongest people that we know because you were able to persevere such negative programming to become this amazing individual that you are now. And that's strength, true strength.
Well, thank you.
Well, you know this. You've helped me through hard times in my life, and it's a blessing. Yeah. I'm gonna cry. I'm like,
aw.
I'm just saying, like, we're lucky to have our friends be our family, and you are our family. Yeah. Like, I need that healing, and to know that we all struggle in some ways, and we're all able to help each other is beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, not that you like have to go through some giant life struggle to like understand people, but I feel like when you're pulled to a spiritual and emotional depths where you're, you know, facing ending it all, or you're facing, you know, riding in the snow because so-and-so tells you you're X, Y, and Z and all this stuff, it just stretches your capacity of like spiritual and emotional understanding. And not to take it back to me, but like, that's like one of my favorite things to do in life is like take this whole situation I went through and like bring it to other people and like look them in the face and be like, you know, it's not the same exact thing, but like, I understand you and like, let's like talk about it and how can I help? And here's a crystal that helped me and this is what it does. And, you know, maybe try this oil and, you know, yeah, he's a fuckboy, fuck him, he's an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's like a part of like the healing journey. Like I said before, like once you're able to heal, often we naturally start sharing that with others. So it's like once you can break through, it just ends up it's like a ripple effect. It just ripples outward to other people too.
Another thing they used to say in the church is let your mess become your message. And I like think about those certain little things that they say, but I think about them now in this current spiritual journey. And I think that right there is great. You know what I mean? I mess be my message. Like I'm getting the chance to right now through you guys to, you know, whatever, for somebody out there that's questioning themselves or whatever, like be able to spread, like I said in the beginning, love and light and self-acceptance and all that beautiful shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, my mess is my life. my message is exactly what we're doing right now. It's our life work that we're doing. Push you into your purpose.
Yeah. Because we need these like dark moments to grow and expand. Also, like, you know, they talk about like how we evolve spiritually and stuff. It's through those dark periods that we have, that we persevere, that ends up giving us the most spiritual like growth and evolution sometimes.
I'm one to push somebody right into the shadow work. Just kick it.
You are. You're doing your shadow therapy right now.
That's what's happening right now.
You do pull the shadow.
You really do.
To like, I don't know how you do it. And then they're better off at the end, but you're not afraid of.
Well, I always say that, like, you are one of those people who can see what's going on and know how to navigate that and to pull that darkness out so you can see.
Yeah.
All connected. You know, I used to say, like, time doesn't discriminate. I mean, something that happened to you when you were 11 can literally still be affecting you when you're 33 like it happened yesterday if it's that deep of a wound, you know. So part of that shadow work like is accepting that it happened and moving on in some sense, you know, so it doesn't affect you currently. But that's all part shadow work.
Wow. Like inner child healing too seems. I might have a question. This is like kind of on topic but not, but I'm curious. So whenever we like do group meditations and stuff like that, you have a very high capacity to see things, like crazy visuals, like off the charts. I don't have this. I'm always jealous of everybody that can do this stuff.
You know, I know it's always the males in our life.
Yeah, like everybody. Well, you know, Sheila has a crazy visuals too.
But does she embody a lot of the masculine energy.
She does. Yeah, she does. She does. So, were you always like that, or did it get more intense as over the years, like over more recent years? I'm just curious. Like, is it something that you had dealt with as a child, and then, or did it seem to just kind of show itself more recently?
I would probably say more recently. Once I got into meditation, I usually, and I don't know if it's because I can't clear my mind properly or what, but whenever I meditate, there's always some sort of color or visual or whatever. And so if we're doing a specific meditation like the Akashic Records, that was really the first time that I ever completely was able to clear my mind. And I was like, whatever I see or feel or whatever, I'm just going to trust that that's what's happening. And then it was just like wildfire. Like I got an image and then the story just went from there. So I actually think clearing my mind explodes the imagery.
Okay.
So yeah, it's definitely gotten stronger. I don't think that it happened previously because I think I was too busy focusing on emotion.
Okay, so it's just like a newer thing that's opened up. How do you get any like auditory components when you go into those meditations, or is it all very visual?
I get very simple audio. It's usually just a word or a couple words. Like the imagery that I can see, I can hear, like if it's like wind or water or whatever. But if somebody comes to me, like the one time we were doing Akashic Records and my brother came to me and I heard him say something in his voice. So it just depends on
meditation. Wow, that's cool. It's cool. I'm just always so curious about it because when I meditate, it's black often. Sometimes if I go deep enough, I will get visuals, but it's always like some sort of like guide showing me something. It's not every time. It's not like a consistent thing that happens for me. Now I get a lot of like downloads, that type of stuff, like that cognitive feeling, like sentient stuff's been more present. But I'm always envious, I guess, of people who get the visuals. And it's funny because I'm an artist. They always say that like I should be theoretically able to get those, but I don't get it like that. And it's cool because like the Akashic Records is an eye-open meditation. And I remember the first time we did it and you got all those visuals, I'm like, his eyes were open.
I again with like I don't know what I'm trying to say when I say this, but like going through what I went through, I felt like stretched me so internally, emotionally, and spiritually that to the point that, just to backtrack for a moment, like my therapist called it splitting. So like I had the Christian me, the gay me, and I could be in a gay setting having Christian conversations in my mind, or in a Christian setting and having the gay me conversations in my mind. It was like I'd go to church and my body was there, but like my spirit would like go up this little spiral staircase into my head and like go off into a world of like imaginary whatever. And I guess maybe that was like a form of protecting myself. But I feel like I've stretched myself in capacity wise to be able to do these sorts of abilities where I can sit here with my eyes open and I can see the physical world around me, but like I'm 99.9% inside my head, emotionally, spiritually, looking at images and feeling things, which they say is a characteristic of an empath, which all of us are. And that reminds me of like when I first, like I said, blew open those gates from the Christian bubble and I was at the precipice of the universe before I knew anything about cord cutting, protection, black crystals, protecting yourself in the ethereal, whatever, astral plane. And I was saying that I would believe anything. It's because I was like blown about in the ocean of spirituality. That's when I started having sleep paralysis. That's when I started feeling deep emotional fear, all kinds of crazy stuff that, with the plants and the oils and the crystals and the talking to people and the spells has all been like organized more. I know what to do to kind of calm all that down. But, when you're physically stuck in your bed, but mentally awake and you feel beings standing over you and whatnot, you're kind of like, oh shit.
You know what? You know what it is? You're just a very powerful witch.
It was coming from me. Like, ooh.
They're coming for me. Sleep paralysis is terrifying.
Oh, God.
Thankfully, I've never experienced that. That'd be the icing on the cake for me. I think I'll be tapped out if I have sleep paralysis. I'll be done. Like, I'm done with this. I gotta go on a full spiritual retreat. I'm out.
Yeah, black shadow figure standing over you in the bed is not fun.
Oh my God.
But you know what? Let's talk about that for a moment. Whenever I blew open those gates and whatever, I almost felt like those black shadows that kept coming back for me was all my old-ish stuff. So, like, I'd get rid of it, and it'd come back, and I'd get rid of it, and it'd come back. And it was shadowy figures standing over me when I was, like, in and out of sleep. Because we've been talking lately about how sleep's really difficult for me, because right before I fall asleep, I'm, like, in between realms, and that's when, like, they're like, if we're going to get him, it's going to be right now when he's like...
I'm sorry, it's not funny at all. It's just terrifying.
So I almost feel like nothing comes for me during the day because I'm so souped up and ready for it. But when I'm trying to fall asleep, they're like, ooh. But so I specifically remember the one night I felt this dark presence. I salted the corners of the bedroom. I had all my crystals out, whatever. And I had saged the house that night because I felt like it was coming for me. And I do feel like it's some sort of dark spirit of doubt and self-hate and all that cursing that people put on me through my life that I used to believe was part of my reality, which it wasn't. It was only part of my reality because they made it my reality, like we were talking about before, would come back because it would come and go. So anyway, I salted the bedroom, had my crystals, saged the house, like, get the hell out of here. And I woke up in the middle of the night, like, out of nowhere. I wasn't dreaming, nothing. I shot up out of the bed, and I looked in the corner of the bedroom, and I felt like for once, every bit of it had condensed into the corner. And I looked in the corner of the bedroom, and it was the blackest black I had ever seen in the center, and then it got less black as it came out. And it was not moving, but it was a shadow. And I looked at it, and I pointed to it, and I said, you have no power here anymore. And I said, be gone. And then I fell immediately back to sleep. And I haven't since seen that shadow or felt that shadow or questioned why I am the way that I am or what I believe or worry about my wrists or blah, blah, blah. It's gone. And
you know what it sounds like to me? I wonder if that was a physical manifestation of that, like what you were saying, or if it was a darker energy that was feeding off of that and you stopped giving it power.
I think it was both. I mean, if it's a physical manifestation of all of that stuff innately is spiritually a succubus of, like what you're saying. It's one and the same.
Oh yeah, because we can get attachments that'll, like, feed us. So we're, like, vibrating low. We can get an attachment that will just keep feeding us that low vibration. So have you ever had like those thoughts, like you're telling yourself this negative stuff, like, no, it'll never work, or of course because I'm this or I'm that, like all this negative stuff, and it's like it came out of nowhere. Those attachments are basically feeding you that horrible stuff. And the only way to get rid of, I mean, there's, other people probably have techniques to get rid of it, but, like, as soon as you decide that you're not going to listen to it anymore, it won't have power, it can't, like, feed off of that, because you're not vibrating low enough anymore. I don't know if that's what that is, but I know we get them all, people get them all the time. And, you have it because of your thought processes. A lot of people instantly go to, like, oh, your ego, your ego, your ego. And it is, but, like, we talk about, like, our egos are something that you have to heal and cultivate. It's not something you get rid of. What you're getting rid of are, like, negative attachments, negative thought processes, stuff like that. You're supposed to heal your ego, love your ego, X, Y, and Z, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But we can't negate the fact that there could be something, attachments, or something else helping to perpetuate negative energy within.
Absolutely. And it can be something as simple as a curse passed down generation by generation. Like, why did my sister's friend's mother hate the femininity in me? Maybe her dad, told her that this is how it should be because his dad told his dad because his told his dad. You know what I mean? Generational, like, curses you pass down to children that they internalize. And like you were saying before with the religion, like, you know, you can hate the religion or whatever. You can also go the opposite way and be like, okay, I could have been like, don't stand this way, don't talk this way. And I could have totally become a product of toxic masculinity because I was so afraid to make any sort of a tiny feminine move. And like, that's a curse. That's a generational curse that's passed down to physically male-bodied individuals because they act a certain way. And so I remember saying once, like, the curse ends here. Like, it's I go, I'm not passing down that curse. It's done.
Yeah.
So, and it takes the sort of awakening and self-awareness to realize that that's what's going on. Something as simple as somebody saying, like, you know, I don't know, whatever. Blondes have fun. So, you know, a brunette thinks that they're not going to have as much fun. I mean, that's a dumb example. But, you know, it's just like, stop with the generalities of certain things because they are the way they are.
Yeah, and you just like choose to break that negative energy.
I love how, like, way earlier into this podcast, you mentioned how things from our childhood can affect us into adulthood, and we don't realize that, and that's why it's important to do the inner child healing. Like, what steps did you take to start on that path of healing your inner child?
I feel like my inner child was healing me all along, like with the moments in the park with the music and stuff. I loved whenever I found that journal that I made in art class that I had brought out, and I was like, I've never written in here. And then I opened it and I was like, wait a minute, I did write in here. And the quote, and I made this book in 11th grade at like the peak of all the gay stuff. The book said, what lies behind us and before us are small matters that lie within us versus what lies within us. And I wrote that in 11th grade. So I found that quote at that time and was reassuring myself that what I felt inside was most important. So I don't know if that was my future self helping my past self, but it's all like cyclical. And I feel like my inner child in my childhood age was healing my inner child. My adult self was healing my inner child. I'm currently healing my inner child. It's always like going. I don't think healing is something that really ever ends. You know, certain wounds will heal, but I don't feel like healing ever ends. So definitely, like, you have to face those difficult things, give it a definition. I always feel like giving something a definition is taking power over it. So instead of just being like thrown in the waves of like a moment that hurt you, you can say, this is what happened. This is how I felt. You can point your boat in a certain direction and navigate yourself out of the storm. You're still in the water, but you're not in the storm, you know.
That was so good. Oh my goodness. See? So I mean, you're doing your shadow healing on me right now.
Well, if I didn't make it out of the storm, you wouldn't be able to hear me. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm saying.
No, it's not linear. It's never over. That's for sure.
No, time to discriminate.
No.
You could spend 30 years in that storm.
So we're getting on to an hour now. Is there anything you would like to share with our listeners before we wrap it up?
Don't doubt yourself. That inner voice inside is leading you to where you need to be. Just trust it.
Yeah. Thank you for being on again.
We love you.